Today, I'm delighted to welcome Gianpaolo Mantini from Higgins Fairbairn, a long-standing client of Time for Advice and an early adopter of CURO. GP is going to be talking about advisor technology, how CURO has helped his business, challenges of change, and just generally observing what he believes is appropriate for the industry moving forward in tech. So, GP, welcome.
Afternoon.
You well?
Very good, thank you, yeah.
Thank you for taking the effort to come up to sunny Oxfordshire, and what a beautiful day it is.
Certainly been better than going into London today, that's for sure.
Well, absolutely. So what would be really useful is to just tell us a little bit about your history, your background, your firm. That would be really great.
Sure, so I think like a lot of people, I fell into the industry back in 2000, and at that time I joined direct sales force. Didn't really enjoy that, joined a national, then joined a DFM-owned advisory firm, and ultimately 2005 I'd had enough of that and wanted to, plough my own field. And I went to have a conversation with an accountancy firm, and after several meetings it seemed the best option was to join them and set up an advice firm within their accountancy practice. It enabled me to build a business more along what would later be RDR lines, and that was really useful. And so for the last 16 years, I've been part of the accountancy firm who then hived off into a separate business. But we very much work as trusted advisors, so to speak, for a lot of the accountancy clients and other clients that have been introduced to us, specialising mainly in senior execs and owner-proprietor businesses. So a nice niche, quite interesting, lots of warm leads from the accountancy firm, and we've now grown to 5 full-time employees and been trying to grow the business organically by promoting staff up. So we've got our first power planner moving to advisor this year, and so everything seems to be going in the right direction.
Fantastic. So, how have you found working with an accountancy firm? Have you found that, has there been any tension? Has there been, anything complicated? Because I guess there's always that fear from the professional advisor, the accountants, when they're referring business to a financial advisor, potentially there's that risk of compromising the client. But do you find, actually having been within the sort of fold of the accountancy firm, that actually that issue exists or not at all?
I think it does exist, and when I first joined them, there was a legacy issue where they'd had an advisor who'd stayed with them for about a year beforehand, created a few issues, and so there was a reluctance from some initial clients because they were like, well, are you going to stick around? After a couple of years, I think those kind of issues go away, and now because I've been there for 15 years, actually new clients are introduced to me, or my services are mentioned from the moment that accountants start to meet a new client where it's appropriate. Existing clients, if they've been coming in, they've seen that I'm there, they know that I'm there. And because a lot of our clients seem to know each other or have referred other clients, it's almost a given that when they're referring another business owner, they're typically saying, oh, and they've also got financial services, you should go and see GP. And so it works very well. And in the past we've had a joint venture with a law firm. And I think if we could get more of a legal input, we could get to that stage where we can become almost like a mini family office. But that's not necessarily something I'm trying to develop as a niche proposition just yet.
I think it's interesting you say that, because increasingly we are seeing, certainly some of our larger firms, larger clients, becoming multidisciplinary. Mm-hmm. So financial planners, wealth managers, managing the money, accountancy and legal. And they all sort of have this panacea desire to create that single truth, that client view, which seems to, I think, evade a lot of businesses, which sort of segues us nicely into your use of technology. So tell us about your use of technology within Higgins Fairbairn.
Okay, so when I joined you in 2012, my issue was that the software I was using at the time, Advisor Office, which was the market leader, or certainly in terms of number of users, was very much server-based. and I wanted to start doing some work from home. I was a small business, I had a young child, and I really needed to be able to work a bit more flexibly. And so that was one of the key drivers for joining you. Now it's evolved that now I only look at new technology if it can interact with my other systems. So I've got a chart of how I use IT, how it integrates, where I think we need further development. And so I've been a firm believer in trying to get technology to do the grind so that I can focus more of my time on seeing clients. So it's interesting that you talk about trying to do the multidisciplinary practice, because I've been heavily involved in trying to get the accountants to push their software forward. And in the main, I think that they are light years behind, because as a industry, I find them to be very conservative. They don't want to adopt new things. And so that's where I think there's a clash of philosophies, because we're very much focused on the future, clients' goals, their aspirations, whereas accountants are much more looking at the historical. And so that's why I think that it's going to be very difficult for the true multidisciplinary practice to evolve, because the systems that firms are using just don't talk properly. And I think that the accountancy industry, with the exception of things like Xero, but the main players are quite far behind in what they need to do.
Well, we are seeing, as I say, this sort of convergence, and one of our larger firms is actually the financial planning arm of an accountancy practice, and what we've done is build a bridge between CURO and CCH, which is their practice management system.
That's the one I've been trying to get the accountants to move on to. It seems to be going in the right direction, but it's still not as all singing and all dancing as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the thing about proprietary software is that you're always held back by the development plans of the software company, I guess. And developing proprietary code is always challenging, because as you expand the capabilities of the software, ultimately you develop yourself into a cul-de-sac, which is, I think, one of the challenges we have as an industry today, because of course all of this technology in common use has found its roots in the mid to late 90s, built on the wrong business model for a start, because of course it was all pre-RDR, it was all very transactional. So when you started doing your beauty parades, when you decided that you wanted to move from advisor office because you needed a virtualized opportunity, virtualized business, and of course, in the last year and a half, that decision was quite fortuitous in a way, wasn't it? Because of course everything's changed in the last period, and we'll come back to that in a few seconds. But so you got this server-based solution, advisor office, great solution, but old, and you wanted to modernise, and so you looked around at the various offerings. So why Time for Advice? What was it that attracted you to Time for Advice?
Part of it was because I had, when I'd been at a previous company that was owned by a dear firm, they had to change the IT software. So I'd been involved in their rationale, and they had dedicated IT people who were looking at, so they'd looked at advisor office, they'd looked at intelligent office, they'd looked at I think Plum, maybe your old key software back in the day, and they had done their due diligence, and because they were IT professionals, I'd very much listened to what they were talking about, and at the time they'd wanted advisor office, but the financial decision maker went with a different software. I can't remember which one. But I'd used an early version of Intelligent Office when I'd been part of Inter-Alliance, and I didn't particularly like it. And so that was them out the window. Advisor Office was really good for what we were doing, but I didn't like the fact that whenever they did an update, it just took up more and more my server space. So I was being asked to spend more money on hardware because, we've rolled out a new report. Whether or not you want it or not, you have to have it. And it was just getting too storage hungry. And so it was very much about, I want to be able to work from home. Yes, I could VPN back then, but it wasn't particularly secure, and your PC has to be on in order, and it got to a stage where I think one Christmas, 2010, it was the year that Heathrow was shut because we'd had a freak Christmas storm, and I had to go into the office just to turn my computer on so that I could work remotely from home. And I just thought, right, okay, we need to look at different things. And so then it evolved, started talking. I can't remember where I first came across you. Then you came in, you gave me the most fantastic slip presentation. Perhaps over-promised and under-delivered in those early days, but that's what a consummate salesman does. So we made that decision to change. A few teething off issues, but I don't regret it. I look at where we are now and what we've been able to do, and I know there's that curve of early adopters. In hindsight, would I look back and say, well, if we'd waited 6 months, would it have been a better experience, or waited 2 years? Possibly, but then I know that at the time I wanted to make a change and I needed to make that business change. So with the benefit of hindsight, perhaps delaying it would have been a better idea, but at the time, based upon the information that I had, it was the right decision. So I stand by that now.
Yeah, well, I think the reality is, from a practical perspective, change is always horrible. Yeah. And I think often in those sort of sales presentations I'm at, I often say, look, it's going to be a horrible journey, and there's no point denying it because change is difficult. And we're not perfect yet. And I think anybody who sort of looks at how things evolve would recognise that there is no ideal solution. But I think certainly the approach that we've adopted with the Microsoft Dynamics stack and what that means, and certainly with Microsoft's change of direction as well, to go entirely cloud-based, to integrate across their entire tech stack, is a really interesting direction of travel. But we'll obviously be talking more about that as we get close to next year.
But that was a key driver for one of the decisions I made, was actually the fact that I didn't necessarily want software that was fully proprietary of a small firm, because then it's based upon your ability to fund development, your time frames and stuff like that. Whereas I think at the time, Microsoft were pumping in about 2 billion a year back in 2012.
Apparently it's 9 billion a year now.
Exactly. Well, nothing personal. You don't have that kind of cash to do the development.
I wish not.
Yeah, likewise. But so the ultimate development I knew was being done by a much larger organisation, that you were customising it to our industry. And so from my perspective, there was less of a financial risk that actually the software was going to stagnate, because the development to a certain extent was being taken out of your hand, because Microsoft were always going to keep developing it. And you could see at the time that they were moving to, you're buying a suite, they were trying to get you to buy it online rather than getting a CD-ROM. So at the time, I think you could see the direction of travel. So the fact that it would integrate with Word, and that, now you use Experimento, but at the time I think we tried, was it MSC Documents or something like that? And that wasn't great. But that whole ability to link in emails and try to build up as much of your client data within one system that was cloud-based, that talked to my other systems, that was good. I still have problems with my phone because of the first time when we did the integration, and we had to push in the clients twice. So I've got 4 or 5 clients in the same time. It's like,
I know.
4 or 5 clients in the same time.
I know. I think the point about all of this, of course, is forever evolving, and the investment that Microsoft is making, which is a major differentiator. I mean, since we launched in 2011, we've been through, I think, 9 iterations of the underlying Dynamics platform. Some we've adopted, some we haven't. But what's coming, I think, is tremendously exciting. As I say, we'll talk more about that later, not today, but at another time when we've got something about to be launched. But as I say, I think the key thing there is that ongoing investment, which is critical, because you can't stand still. Change is absolutely consistent across the business, and if you don't change, you go backwards. It's as simple as that. So, candidly, how has CURO helped your business? How has it enabled you to do more?
I think that from the start I was very interested in technology. And so, I've had conversations with several members of your staff over the years, and to gain a better understanding of what it can do. I'm also a bit of a tech geek or nerd, and so I enjoy finding out about things. And oh, hang on, that's available on it going through a word training online, and oh, you can do that. So the idea of business process flows, I came to you guys about it, and you had already started looking at it, and we had a conversation back with you back, it must be 3-4 years ago. And I could see how it could really develop. And then the Head Start process, I think that's really interesting because it's codified some of the stuff that we were doing within a business, which means that we can provide a more robust, repeatable process. It means we can reduce our potential mistakes, or mistakes don't occur because people are following processes that we've hard-coded into the system. I think we've had quite a good symbiotic relationship in that I provided my process document that Jigsaw Tree drew up 4 or 5 years ago, and it seems to be a lot of the backbone of what the Head Start processes are. The fact that our processes have now changed slightly because of the last 18 months, we're not sending as much in the post, we're doing a lot more remotely, and as technology has overtaken our original processes, that just needs to feed through. But I mean, that's an evolvement. I know that it takes many months to build a process and test it and develop it, and by that time, obviously, I don't think any of us were expecting the COVID pandemic to occur, and the impact on how people work would be so dramatic and positive in certain circumstances. So, those things have improved. The fact that we were using a system that allowed us to move activities between each other, and we had processes in the background, meant that when we were working from home, to a certain extent, I could see an overview of where people were at different stages on different client works, because I could see their activities and where they are along the set process. So that's been really useful over the past year, and I think it's just a case of things need to be finessed, or things need to evolve, because the technology's now superseded what we were doing 4 or 5 years ago. So one of the integrations that we make use of is cash calc, and we've looked at lots of different cash flow modelling. So we've tried IFC, we've looked at Voyant in the past, but the big one for me was the fact that it was a two-way integration with CURO, and I know that Niche has moved over to a CURO as well. So that gave me some added confidence, because let's face it, if Niche has moved over to you, the integration is going to get better and better, because it's in their best interest.
And Niche IFA, of course, were the previous owners of Cash Calc.
Yes,
Cash Calc having recently been sold, of course, to FE.
And so the merry-go-round goes round. But to me, the idea of having the electronic fact find, which, let's face it, was a dream 4 or 5 years ago. I think we were talking about it years ago, how we could do it as a PDF, and then we could plug it in, and the development costs were going to be so astronomical that we're like, no, we'll just send it out in the post, thanks. But that kind of stuff is really useful, because it's removing duplication error. I can send it out to the client. If it's wrong, they can amend it, or if it's wrong in our system, well, you gave us that data. So if we're working on duff assumptions, it's because you've provided it, which, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but ultimately, we need to be able to have that audit trail of where did we get that information from. And so that's improved the quality of our review process, so we can send out a new review, we pull the information out of CURO with the current values, ping it to the clients, and then they make any changes. So it speeds it up, and they're getting into it. So I think what they're doing is really interesting in how it integrates with what you're doing. So for me, that's a fantastic benefit of using CURO. We also make use of Oxford Risk, and we wanted to use it, and then when we found that they were doing the integration with you, again, that was just another tick. What we just need to now get is the Oxford Risk talking to Cash Calc in the background, or so that it's almost like a three-way integration, so that the financial data is passed over to Oxford Risk seamlessly so that then we're trying to limit we're trying to improve efficiency, reduce the number of inaccuracies and errors, and then that just makes the job automated. Why not? We've got all these different systems. Them talking to each other is really what's going to drive efficiency and give me more time to do my job.
And that's, of course, why we call it Time for Advice. The whole essence of what we're trying to achieve is to bring together all of those disconnected systems so that they can integrate with that single client truth. The panacea, as you said, is the single client truth, which feeds everything, all of your tools, all of your, your reporting methods, and also ultimately your portal, so that the financial planning service potentially, and I guess this is the direction of travel, is always on. So it's available to the client on demand by any device, and that's what the ultimate vision is, I suppose, for the business, where you can service the business or your clients in the way they want to consume your service. It's creating that sort of omni-channel distribution service or means of engaging with you, and that's absolutely the focus. So you touched on the pandemic, and that's pertinent because clearly that has changed everything. The whole world has changed. And in terms of the direction of travel, how do you see technology now evolving in our industry, and how important do you think that is?
I think there's going to be more of a focus on integration and using technology. It has to be. We made a change to one of the platforms that we used, and we did it thankfully before the pandemic, but they were using open architecture software. They were already using DocuSign, using integration into Origo, so everything was seamless. So it's fundamental. The fact that they have open architecture and could build an integration into your valuation system in the space of 3 months and get it deployed within 6 months within CURO was just wow, compared to conversations that we've had in previous years about, do you think you could get this provider on? One of the large DFMs that we've used historically, it's taken 5-6 years, and it's still they email us once a month with an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. And you're like going, really? Yeah. That's what you think integration is? So I think that we will take a preference for using providers that integrate within our software network. I don't think I know it. I use OneNote a lot. And so I've got my CRM in the middle, and I've got all the different functions that I need to run my business. So be it reconciliation. Okay, am I getting electronic remuneration feeds in from the providers? Am I able to export the data into my cash flow modeling? Am I able to get updated valuations? Am I able to push that data out from my CRM into my client portal? Am I able to do effective marketing lists? Am I able to do decent reporting either for the regulator or for my own business purposes? All these things need to be able to talk to each other, and if the software doesn't have an integration with what I need to do, I need to find out, well, is there another bit of kit that does it? Because what I don't, we changed from Iris being our protection quoting system to iPipeline because it integrates into the system. It drops the key features, documents, illustrations against the client record. So actually the compliance aspect's being done for me, which means I don't need to save it somewhere else because the system is not intuitive, but it's talking to each other. So it's helping me do my job in a more compliant manner. And so that's what I think is going to be interesting going forward, and which will drive certainly how I work with different businesses in that if they're not on the same page with regards to the adoption of technology or developing their technology, we will either stop using them or, at worst case, move business to other providers that can facilitate what we need to do, so we can provide a better client experience. As you say, omni-channel. Well, if I can't update a valuation on in a real time or a daily basis, why would I want to use that provider? Because then I have to manually update the valuation. Well, who wants to do that?
Well, you're going backwards, aren't you? You've got a taste for what is possible, and of course the expectation is that more will be able to support you and your business in the way you want to be supported, in exactly the same way as your clients will increasingly demand more ways of accessing you at their convenience rather than at your convenience, which I think is the key.
Exactly. I mean, the Zoom or Teams or whatever people have been using has been great for servicing existing clients. I've personally not found it great for onboarding new clients because of the way that we work. And I have already gone back into the office. All my team are back in the office full time, and we're offering client meetings to clients. And I've been surprised at how many people have actually said, yes, I'd love to have the excuse to come into London because, yes, I'd rather have this conversation with you face to face. Other clients are like, well, fine, let's just do it on Zoom because I just want a 15-minute, 20-minute meeting. Happy to do that, but they're also aware that they can come in. So I think going forward we'll do more remote, which is great because it means that we can be more productive. One of the things that I've really found useful is that we had just introduced recording of all our client meetings pre-lockdown, and there was a little bit more pushback from clients going, well, why do we need to do it? And obviously it's for transparency and so we can improve our training and all that kind of stuff. However, with Zoom, it almost became, well, we're just going to do that so that I don't have to make as many notes, I can just do it. And so that's meant that we can push that out to clients. So it's now expected that we can record. And I bought a software called Otter, which is fantastic. It connects into Zoom and it automatically transcribes all my client meetings. And it's like $99 a year. It's nothing. And the accuracy's got a lot better. And it starts to, certain clients that I've had lots of Zoom calls with, it's automatically recognizing their voice. And so it's saying, okay, it's me talking, then Joe blogs or what have you. And so that's now becoming, I'm exporting that transcription and attaching it as a part of the meeting record. Where I can see software going is that, well, if I've got really good transcription software, so, the one that's free, Dictate within Word, I would love it that I could be able to click within CURO, click on a field and just talk into my computer and update the review record, so the agenda items, so things that we've talked about, because I can talk a lot quicker than I can type, and I can verbalize it, get it in and move on. So some kind of dialogue, for example, where I can start the process and I can say next or what have you, and I can just talk at the computer. It can get down what I need to say. It helps the compliance. It helps build up those soft notes. I think that we need to start using some other fields within the software, which I know that are already there, insights, so that then we can take that to the next level. Because certainly our business is going more about the well-being and the focusing more on the client's longer term aspirations. The static data needs to be in there, but we also need to record those soft facts, the ones that if a client phones up, they can talk to any member of the team and they are all aware of, Joe Blogs wants to have a career change at 55 and go and become a portrait painter, or whatever it is that they want to do, so that everybody's aware of those clients' aspirations. So it's less of a transactional relationship. It's more about a proper relationship. I wouldn't necessarily say friendship, but there are clients that I've been dealing with for a long time that I would consider friends, but it's not that kind of, it needs to be professional, but you need to have a greater understanding of what they are trying to achieve over the longer term, but also cognizant that these things change. So just so that we can capture more of those soft fact data.
Well, look, that's been really interesting. And so to finish off, if I were to ask you a simple question, if you were to offer advice to a firm like yours about moving back office systems, what would that be?
It would be to sit down not just the business owners, but sit down with the people that actually use the systems, because unless you're fully au fait with what everybody does, you won't know what are the critical pinch points. And either do it on a whiteboard or OneNote, and sit down and put your CRM at the center and understand what data you want to collate. Then understand what other systems you want to use, be it portal, cash flow modeling, which providers are the ones that you use the most, and find out, well, who's going to give you the best data into your software so that you have control of the data rather than the product provider, but you can simplify your time and improve your efficiency by being able to see everything in one place, that everybody can understand where it is without having to go, oh, you need to go to this website, you need to go to that to get the information. So basically map out your technology usage, what you're using now, what the pinch points are, where you want to get to, and then choose your software around which ones can already integrate with each other and which one has a forward-thinking mentality about the interaction between different software providers. Because if it's a closed box or not prepared to change, then it's not going to be long before you're getting frustrated and wanting to move again.
GP, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.